So it's grade 7. I'm 11 years old, and my dad is a pastor, so he sent me to a Christian school. I'm in the computer lab one day, and class is just wrapping up, when a friend comes to me all excited. He tells me that his friend at soccer showed him this awesome website that he's supposed to go check out. So I go, what is it? Now he tells me the site, and it sounds like something political. And I was 11 years old, so I didn't really care about politics, so I didn't really understand what the whole hype was about the site. So I turned my chair around, kind of shrugged my shoulders like, whatever. And he's like, dude, let's check it out. You know, he's all excited. He's like, we gotta check this site out. For some reason, he was really determined. So I type in the website, and little did I know, this moment was going to ruin my entire life. I was so shocked by what I saw. And I remember I looked to my friend, and he had this weird look on his face, like he was kind of intrigued, but also mortified at the same time. And he kind of maybe knew what was going on. It was sort of hard to tell. A lot happened in that one moment, but we managed to shut down the computer before anybody saw what we were doing, which at the time was really the most important thing. For the next year, the image is in my head. I don't really have the urge to watch it, but one day my parents are gone, and I'm in the home all alone, just me and the computer. I'm kind of bored, I got nothing else to do, and I remembered the website name. And that begins a new pattern for me. Anytime that I have private access to the family computer, I'm sitting down and I'm watching. Now, right around that time, my family moved across the country, and I had to start over with a new place, a new class, new friends, all in grade 8. This was a chance to quit porn. I knew it was bad, I felt ashamed about it, I was ready for a fresh start. And then I got invited to my first sleepover, and I wasn't gonna say no because I was in a new class and I needed to make new friends. So we're all having a good time, we're playing video games and we're eating junk food and we're watching movies, and off in the corner a bunch of guys start watching something on a computer, and they're laughing away, but they're not looking at each other and they're not looking away from the screen. Their eyes are just glued. They were watching porn. So more guys start to gather, and eventually everybody's gathered around the computer watching. And I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I didn't want to be that one guy who didn't watch, and at the same time I also was really intrigued by what we were looking at. And so all throughout my high school years, anytime I was stressed or alone, I would watch porn. This just became my thing. Now, I graduated from high school early, and I went straight into university. I was very young. And this is where things got really bad. I remember one day I was in class from 8 to 4, and then at 4 o'clock I had a lab, and then after that lab I played basketball with friends for a little while, and then I ran home and I had to cram for an exam the next day. Now at the time I was living in my parents' basement, and I had a bedroom, and right beside my bedroom was my dad's office where he had his computer and his study and everything. Now the next room beside my bedroom was my dad's office, which had a desk and a study, and it also had a sofa bed. It was a really hot day, so my younger brother was sleeping on the sofa bed because it was in the basement and his normal room was upstairs. I had my own laptop that I did for work and school and all that stuff, but as much as I could, anytime I wanted to watch porn, I always tried to do it on another device. I just had this weird psychological thing about keeping my laptop pure. I know it's stupid, but it's what I believed at the time. I was feeling so stressed about this exam. I just realized I had underprepared. I was not ready to go through it at all. I just stepped out of my room and I thought to myself, like, I need something. I need something to just relax and to give me assurance. And I looked over, the door was right there, and I thought, well, I could, but then I remembered my brother was in the room, and I kind of had this, almost like the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other, and I'm kind of going back and forth trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. So I just thought I'd peek in, just to see. And I remember, looking over and seeing if my brother was awake, if he was sleeping, what he was up to. And sure enough, he was sound asleep and his face was turned away from the computer. Now, I knew of a couple favorite videos I had that always did the trick. And so I kind of did the math and I figured, okay, if I jump in, I watch a couple of these videos, it should be quick, shouldn't wake him up, and I should be good to go. And I knew it was wrong. I knew it was super risky, and I just didn't really care. Now, I didn't get caught that night, but I'll tell you that when I was done, I knew that I needed help. I knew I couldn't keep going this way any longer. Now, a few things were happening in my life at this time. I was getting ready to graduate, so I was starting to think about a career, and I was also starting to take my faith more seriously. And I knew that if I wanted to have a successful career and I actually wanted to grow spiritually, I was gonna have to quit corn for good. I had no other option. So I decided to quit. I cleared my browser history, I reset my devices, and I went 3 measly days. And then I binged so hard. I literally couldn't resist it. And I was trying the absolute best of my abilities. This began a 3-year journey of being on and off with porn. Some days good, some days not good. And I'll never forget this. I had this one day, I was doing really well. You know, it had been like a few months and I was feeling good. I wasn't even really thinking about it a lot. I was focused on other things in my life. And I went to church and there was a guest speaker at church that evening. And she was this amazing woman. She had done all these incredible things and she was really passionate about her work, and she looked exactly like an actress that I used to watch all the time. And to be honest, I don't remember what that woman talked about that night because all I was thinking about was whether or not I was gonna go home and watch corn. I went home and I tried so hard to fight it. I really told myself I'm not gonna do it. You know, I knew it wasn't right and I had all this progress, but eventually I just told myself, just one video. And before you know it, I have another huge relapse. And I undid months of work in one single night. I had this realization, you know, one day I thought, man, I've been trying really hard to quit for 3 years. I should be doing better than this. Like, this is not what it's supposed to look like after 3 years of recovery. Nothing was actually working. The internet filters, the accountability groups, the white knuckling and the prayer partners and all the spiritual disciplines and things I was doing, they just weren't doing the trick. I'd get these little bursts of success, but I'd just fall short again eventually. I wound up going to a ministry school to become a pastor like my dad. And this is where I really began to heal. I don't have time to explain it all, but I was learning about getting my needs met, healing from trauma, and forming meaningful connections with other people. Basic things that honestly I was really bad at. And my heart was more full, so I was starting to make better choices. And I thought I had made it. I really thought this is it. I finally figured it out. It had been months and months since I watched corn. And not only had it been months, but this felt different. I had never really felt this way before. And the school offered me an internship because I had done so well in the program and I was having so much success in a bunch of areas of my life. So I went home to visit my parents for a few weeks before the internship started. And there I was back in my basement bedroom, the place where I had watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of adult content. I told myself it was going to be different this time. And it was for a few days. But after about a week, I was binging all over again. I literally couldn't resist it. So I came back from my time off to start an internship at a ministry school where I was being groomed to become a pastor. I was supposed to be a person of integrity and I was supposed to be a role model for the students that were going to join the school. And I didn't want to be a fraud, you know, so I decided I was going to come clean to the director of the school. So I confided in him, I told him everything, and he was really nice. Actually, I was pretty surprised. He was really kind. And he just assured me everything was going to be okay. Now, by the time my internship finished, I was a different person. I mean, really, I was a different person. Wasn't watching any adult material, barely had the temptation for it, really had a lot of momentum. Things were going in the right direction. And I had accepted my first job as a full-time pastor, but again, I had a few weeks to kill before I started, and so I wound up back at my parents' place. This time, I didn't watch. I stayed clean. And I started pastoring. And the first year as a pastor, I barely thought about it. I was focused on my career. I was getting things started and I felt really good, you know, being this clean for this long. It wasn't even really crossing my mind that much. Now, I also did some music on the side, and so I was getting ready to release this album and I was starting to feel the stress. You know, I had this new job and this new community, new expectations, and then I had this project on the side that was a lot of work and a lot of different people involved. And at the time, I was living with a family from the church. They were a retired couple, and so they were upstairs, and I had their basement all to myself. And once again, on a lonely night, full of stress, I found myself binging like never before. 18 months of freedom down the drain. So I didn't know where to turn other than my dad. And so I called him up a few days before my album launch, and I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. You know, he's a pastor and I'm supposed to become a pastor and follow in his footsteps. And I'm just laying everything about my addiction and my struggle. My dad was not only gracious, but he was actually open with me about his own struggle and he assured me everything was going to be okay. That was November 2015, and I barely watched anything for the next few months. In January 2016, I decided I should get some more professional help. I didn't want to drag this any further into my life and definitely my career now that it was becoming more established. And the specialist I worked with focused a lot on my relationship with my mom, which I was kind of surprised by. But eventually he helped me uncover some hurt and some pain that I had been dealing with from earlier on in my childhood. And he told me that because I had these pain points and these deficiencies with my mom as a child, I was looking to women and explicit content to feel affirmed and some sense of connection to kind of compensate for what was going on. So he talked me through this forgiveness process to basically release my mom for all the hurt and all the pain that she had caused. And I walked out again feeling like a different person. Now, after that appointment, I had one slip in February 2016, the next month. And since then, I haven't looked back. And look, I want to encourage you, man. I know how hard it is, and I know what it's like to have all this excitement and then find yourself struggling a couple months later, wondering if you're ever going to figure this out, maybe just resolving that this is kind of going to be your lifelong struggle and that's just the way it is. I learned something. One of my mentors taught me this when I was going through recovery. And he said this really, really clear to me, and I want to share it with you as well, because honestly, this advice really helped me on some of those harder days and those harder moments. He told me, if you don't quit, you win. You can see in my story, this has not been a perfect journey. I've had tons of failures and shortcomings and relapses along the way. And I just had to remind myself, as long as I keep going, eventually something breaks, eventually something clicks, eventually something works. And I know that the same is going to be true for you. And part of the reason that I know this, I'm not just saying this to encourage you, it's not some hollow motivation. I've actually been able to help a lot of other guys have similar success stories to mine. That's been one of my greatest joys the last few years, is helping guys quit and really quit for good. I put a training video together that kind of explains the whole system of just what it looks like from start to finish. Because, you heard my story. When I wanted to help other guys, I actually had to kind of reverse engineer. I had to go backwards and say, okay, what actually clicked? What actually made sense? What didn't work? It's just a simple little training video, but it might help you and it might give you some guidance on what the next steps are that you need to take in your own journey.